Giving more details about their investigation into the deaths of the actor Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa.
Gene Hackman's name once graced the silver screen with unforgettable power, but his final days remained cloaked by unsettling rumors. Was his quiet retreat from public life nothing more than a retired legend's desire for peace? Or did someone ensure he never spoke again? The mystery only deepened after the sudden and bizarre loss of his wife, Betsy Arakawa. Now, Hackman's daughter stands at the heart of an investigation filled with puzzling details, contradicting accounts, and whispers of a scheme that might go far beyond a simple family tragedy. Yet one question burns brighter than the rest. Could this entire story have been prevented if the truth had come out sooner? Everyone who followed Hollywood knows how the most celebrated icons often retire quietly. Yet the way Gene Hackman slipped off the radar felt more extreme than a typical goodbye. He didn't just reduce public appearances, he disappeared almost entirely. Neighbors in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where he chose to settle, remember seeing less and less of him every month. At first, people assumed he wanted privacy, a reprieve from decades spent under glaring spotlights. But that wasn't the whole story. In the last few months before his death, even close acquaintances, directors who once called him weakly, old friends from the film industry, found themselves shut out. Phones went unanswered, emails bounced back, visits were politely declined at the door. Gene Hackman had once been a man of robust energy, joking with people at his local cafe, waving at neighbors from his porch. Suddenly, it seemed he wasn't stepping outside at all. Some chalked it up to age, while others speculated deeper issues. One rumor suggested he had grown paranoid of an unseen threat. Another theory claimed he was simply fed up with Hollywood's relentless gossip. But after everything that followed, people started suspecting something darker might have forced him into isolation. Something with roots in the underbelly of the entertainment world itself. When the first official word of Gene Hackman's passing emerged, the public erupted with shock. How could he have been gone for days or weeks without anyone noticing? Whispers circulated immediately. Who found him, and why were authorities so tight-lipped about the details? Later, we learned something even more unsettling. His wife, Betsy Arakawa, had died as well, and her cause of death was downright bizarre. Authorities said both had likely passed in their home, alone. But the timeline wasn't adding up. Some claimed the security system had been switched off days earlier. Neighbors mentioned a stack of unread mail piling up. Others insisted they saw a dim light flickering in an upstairs window long after Hackman should have been in bed. Everyone wanted answers, and no one seemed to have them. Amid this confusion, one figure suddenly became the center of attention. Leslie, Hackman's daughter. She had always portrayed herself as incredibly close to her father, supposedly in constant contact. Yet investigators discovered massive gaps in her narrative. She had hardly visited him. Phone records revealed no weekly calls. Friends of the family shook their heads, unsure why she would paint such a rosy picture of a relationship that might have been more distant than she ever let on. Even more perplexing, Leslie claimed the official cause of her father's death was a gas leak, a story the police quickly dismissed. Why would she make that up? Or had she been deceived herself? For many, her inconsistent claims signaled one of two possibilities. Either Leslie had been shielded from the truth by someone else, or she was deliberately hiding details to protect herself. Before the public could digest the strangeness of Hackman's passing, an even bigger twist came crashing in. Leslie was called to testify in a case that questioned the official story behind both her father's and Betsy's deaths. Attorneys hoped her statements would clear up confusion over the contradictory reports. Instead, her testimony ignited more speculation than ever. Leslie spoke haltingly at first, eyes shifting whenever attorneys pressed her about her last conversation with her father. She insisted he was mentally sharp, able to drive if he wished, and showed no signs of severe illness. Investigators, however, had already released partial findings indicating he had battled advanced Alzheimer's, alongside a string of heart problems. Suddenly, every word she uttered sounded suspect. Yet her biggest shock came when she revealed something in open court that no one expected. They must answer for deceiving the entire world about my father's death. Leslie never specified who they referred to. The silence afterward crackled with tension as the courtroom waited, breath held, for her to say more. She didn't, at least not yet. This single statement triggered a tidal wave of questions. Which "they" was Leslie so afraid to name? Was she speaking of Hollywood power brokers? Did she suspect medical personnel? Or was it certain family members who might have misrepresented the truth for their own reasons? Rather than clarifying events, Leslie's words deepened the mystery surrounding Hackman's final chapter. In the midst of swirling controversies, all eyes swung back onto Leslie Hackman. Her testimony in court kept sliding between declarations of innocence and hints that someone else was manipulating events. Yet more suspicious details emerged. Avoiding law enforcement. Investigators had to subpoena Leslie to get her to speak at all. If she had nothing to hide, why dodge them so blatantly? Estate control. Right after Jean's death, Leslie allegedly moved to secure the entire estate. Though Jean had always been tight-lipped about finances, relatives noticed rapid changes in how assets were allocated. Suddenly, the will looked different from what he'd once described publicly. Uninvolved in final care. Even though Leslie claims she shared a close bond with her father, she played no role in his end-of-life arrangements or care. Not a single day spent with him as he struggled, no significant phone records, and no sign she'd known about his heart attacks or Alzheimer's. The tension amplified when observers noticed her mannerisms during a dinner with her sister Elizabeth shortly after the funeral. Witnesses reported Leslie was all smiles, openly chatting in an upscale restaurant with no clear sign of grief or shock. Grieving looks different for everyone, but to outside eyes, her behavior seemed uncomfortably detached. A dark possibility began to form. Could Leslie's distance and inconsistencies be linked to a plan that involved both Hackman and Betsy meeting their ends under suspicious circumstances? Skeptics wondered whether Leslie sought a larger piece of the inheritance or whether someone else used Leslie as a pawn in a grander scheme. It was impossible to tell, but suspicion had latched onto her, and it wasn't letting go. The tension in the courtroom mounted each time Leslie took the stand. She'd flush at tough questions, sometimes offering up fresh tidbits that only fueled further speculation. Attorneys pressed her. Why didn't you visit if your father was in such good shape? Did you ever speak to your stepmother about his true condition? Were you aware that neighbors hadn't seen him outside for months? Leslie's answers twisted into vague references, half accusations, and repeated claims of having been shut out of her father's private life. She pinned the blame on Betsy for not letting her see him. But those living close by said they never witnessed Leslie trying to visit in the first place. To complicate matters, Leslie's statement about "they must answer for deceiving the entire world" still lingered. When asked to clarify who "they" were, she refused, claiming she feared retaliation if she named certain individuals. It was a cryptic stand, and it kept the public fixated on every new hearing. Week after week, the questions multiplied, but real answers seemed scarce. Deeper digging revealed that attempts to investigate Hackman's medical records hit roadblocks. Certain files were sealed under unusual privacy clauses, even though Hackman was a public figure, and typically such documents wouldn't be locked away so tightly. Betsy's final doctor visits were similarly shrouded in confusion. Some clinics claimed no record of her at all, while others admitted they'd seen her but refused to elaborate, citing confidentiality. Could someone high up have intervened to ensure the truth never saw daylight? Or were these locked files just the standard procedure to protect a celebrity's privacy? Every new dead end only heightened the atmosphere of suspicion. The question of motive hung in the air. From financial greed to conspiracies involving hush-hush Hollywood secrets, everything felt plausible and equally terrifying. As the public tried to piece the puzzle together, two main theories evolved regarding Leslie's role. The grieving daughter in denial. Believers of this viewpoint argue Leslie had distanced herself from her father for personal reasons, maybe a family feud or disagreements with Betsy. When the press asked about Hackman's condition, she created a more comforting narrative, imagining him healthier than he was. In that sense, her inaccuracies weren't malicious, but rather came from a place of guilt and emotional avoidance. This theory suggests she was genuinely caught off guard by the real circumstances of his passing, only learning the truth when faced with medical reports and investigators. The calculated architect of a cover-up. Others insist Leslie knew about Hackman's advanced illnesses all along but kept quiet, hoping to manipulate the estate. Her claims that he was fine, along with the gas leak story, were her attempts to maintain control over public perception while she made moves behind the scenes. This perspective hints at a larger plan to isolate Hackman and Betsy, ensuring no outside interference in his final days. If that's true, Why? Possibly to secure a bigger inheritance, or even to hide something the couple discovered that Leslie found too explosive to let slip. With both theories dominating tabloids and online forums, the court case raged on. Day after day, new bits of evidence poured in. Yet the fundamental question stayed maddeningly out of reach. Hackman's friends recall that in his last public appearances, he seemed preoccupied by something. He would casually mention things he couldn't talk about, or matters too risky to publicize. At the time, no one pressed him, assuming he was referring to standard Hollywood politics or just venting about an old dispute. But now, in hindsight, those offhand remarks have taken on an eerie weight. According to a neighbor, Hackman mentioned wanting to write a tell-all memoir that some folks aren't going to like. Did he ever start it? If so, was that manuscript what triggered an avalanche of hidden threats? Perhaps the reason he disappeared wasn't due to illness alone, but due to the creeping sensation that someone intended to keep him silent. And then there's Betsy. She was said to be fiercely protective of Hackman, ensuring no prying eyes disturbed him. Could she have realized they were under a genuine threat? Her abrupt demise by an extraordinarily rare infection now reads like a page from a twisted thriller. The couple's final days, cut off from everyone, might have been an act of self-preservation that ended in calamity. Leslie remains in an uncomfortable spotlight. The media demands clarity she either can't or won't give. Despite her earlier defiance, she now appears more subdued. In her last public remarks, she said something that struck many as sincere sorrow. "I lost both my father and my stepmother, and I may never know why it happened this way. It's possible she truly was blindsided, forced to piece together an impossible puzzle just like the rest of us." But that wasn't the end. Rumors flew that Leslie has filed multiple motions to block certain investigative findings from being made public, citing privacy concerns. This only deepened suspicion. If she wants the truth, why hide any part of the official reports? She might be protecting something far bigger than herself, or she might be genuinely terrified of what else these investigations could reveal. One possibility stands out. Perhaps Leslie thinks there is a lethal threat still lurking. If some powerful hand orchestrated Hackman's downfall, going public with too many details might put her in the crosshairs too. That would explain her contradictory behavior, her urgent attempts to revise the will, and her anxious tiptoeing around direct questions. The local district attorney has hinted that more revelations could surface once a final medical examination is complete. Test results might pinpoint whether Betsy's illness truly came from random rodent exposure or if it was artificially introduced. Investigators are also re-examining phone and internet logs to see if anyone tampered with them. And they're reviewing footage from surrounding areas that might show unexpected visitors near the Hackman home. Gene Hackman's story doesn't end with final answers. It ends with questions. Questions that may linger forever. Was his death the culmination of hidden Hollywood schemes? The sorrowful mishap of two isolated individuals? Or an intricate plot spun by his own daughter? The more you dig, the more tangled it becomes. Whatever answers do or do not surface, Gene Hackman's life and legacy remain unforgettable. And for every rumor or conflicting statement, there's a deeper question echoing through Tinseltown and beyond. How many more untold secrets hide in the shadows, waiting to break free? If you've stayed with us to the end, thank you for being part of this journey. Let us know your thoughts. Did Leslie conceal vital evidence, or was she another victim of forces larger than any of us could imagine? We'll keep digging for the latest information, so stay alert for new twists.